Tragic news out of Port Adelaide that John McCarthy has died. The wider football community is still coming to terms with the untimely passing of the young player.
That was just so devastating when we heard that John McCarthy had been killed on a post-season holiday. That's the moment nobody expects.
John McCarthy tragically lost his life in Las Vegas on Port Adelaide's footy trip. A favourite son of the Magpies and then Power, leaving an undeniable mark.
You just shake your head and you're devastated for the loss of life, first of all, for all his loved ones, but also the tragedy of potential snuffed out in an instant. But the thing that you always take from it is that he was such a wonderful young man and brought light into the room every time that he entered one.
It was tough going for the Magpies, J-Mac's former home. His old teammates bravely won their semi that week, but the day after his funeral, lost in Sydney, with emotions running high the week after.
We miss Johnny McCarthy at Collingwood, as they do at Port Adelaide, so badly. Yeah, that night on the footy show, we were sitting there and word came through in the final break.
We've just heard some news through which I'm sure will touch the hearts of all football supporters. We've only just found out in the break that the great E.J. Whitten, Ted Whitten, has passed away tonight.
So, yes, I delivered the news down the barrel, holding back my own tears, I must admit. I turned to Sam Newman, and there wasn't much coming from Sam as well. He summoned some words.
Well, Eddie, I know the show must go on, but if we'd known that an hour ago, the show wouldn't have gone on, because you just cannot do a show like this and carry on like we have tonight with that in the back of your mind. So that's just a...
And then I looked across at Doug. He was in tears, and the panel on the other side were just silent, heads down. And Doug was brave enough and strong enough to give some thoughts as well, and then we just closed the show and went to black.
1995, the game said goodbye to Mr. Football, a modern-day icon.
It was a sombre moment. I was fortunate enough to meet the great Teddy Whitten a couple of years earlier, and I think I was still getting over my broken hand from his handshake. To see tears in the eyes of the footy show cast was very touching, and I think to see Dougie Hawkins on the show that night as well with a tear in his eye, that really hit home.
His final appearance was perhaps his most memorable.
Was just one of those moments that you were happy to be there. It was, it transcended football. It was big, and that was Teddy. He was bigger than the game.
Just 8 weeks after a stroke, his sight failing him, but his courage remaining. It'll live long in footy's legend, just like the man himself.
I think because of the nature of the man, obviously I had prostate cancer myself, and from that point on I started to take, I think, a bit of interest that a man so strong and athletic and enduring could fall to a cancer. And I think it really shook me at that particular time in the sense of who he was and how this had happened. And I think the football lost one of the great influences. I mean, he just probably impacted on the field and off the field in that period of time like no other man.
A lot of people say we lost a great man in football, and we did. But what we did really lose, we lost one of the nicest people that football's ever produced.
This is not a drill. This is not a joke. This is unbelievable.
You've got some breaking news which you can give to us here on 5 to Play.
Police have just come down to confirm that the 55-year-old man who was murdered here at Somerton Park at 2 o'clock this morning was the coach of the Adelaide Crows, Phil Walsh.
As we talk about tragedy in sport, we talk about it glibly and casually, but we never expect that tragedy will actually be implanted in the game. And it was felt as deeply as anything we've ever experienced.
I remember getting the call at about 4:45 in the morning. I was in at breakfast radio and the chairman rang me, and from that moment on, it really didn't sink in for a few hours, I think, until his face come on the TV screen at about 7:15.
Adelaide Crows coach Phil Walsh was killed by his own son in his own bed. The entire competition went into mourning, emotion spilling out on the field across all games with all teams. While for the Crows and their fans, the shock of the loss was extreme. tributes left en masse at the club's headquarters. A game was abandoned, and when they next fronted, a loss was the result, before the emotion became all too much.
You just take your hat off to them. So much respect for the way they've handled themselves and the ability to come out here tonight and put in a very, very respectable performance.
This is, anyway, it's hard to put into words.
For a lot of the youngsters there, he was like their dad, which is a sign of a good coach. So, yeah, it was a tough period of the footy club.
Football prepares you for most things, but I don't think anybody was ever prepared for the circumstances around his death.
It's still hard to believe that happened, the death of Phil Walsh.
Trevor Barker died in 1996 at the age of 39, amazing. He would have been the next St Kilda coach. The courage that he showed coaching the VFL team that year, coached 3 weeks up until his deathbed, which is just amazing. And, you know, I remember the service at the Moorabbin Town Hall. You could have had 8 halls, there still wouldn't have been enough people to fit in there. And he epitomised St Kilda.
Trevor Barker is one of the most underestimated people in football. I was lucky enough to be presented with his life membership after his death because of the Trevor Barker Foundation, that all his mates worked together to look after kids with cancer. And that was what Trevor was all about. It wasn't just a charity in his name. He gave and he gave and he gave. He'd turn up to every kid's party, but was one of the greatest footballers, most courageous, loyal, intelligent, and out of a night time at a nightclub, he was the best I've ever seen.
Tragically, exactly 1 year later, one of the saddest days in the history of the Magpies, when Darren Millane was killed in a car crash.
I think it was 3 o'clock in the morning, I get a phone call. I think it was Gubby Allen. You know, Darren Millane had passed away. And I said, come on. He said, no, it's true, he's had an accident and he's passed away. And it just, probably one of the hardest days of my life.